What's going on, guys? So last night I had an interview with Rover Sports, which is a show on ESPN radio out in Philadelphia, and I basically talked about what else but the Jaguars. So in this video I'm basically going to show my interview. Shout out to those guys over there, and hope you guys enjoy.
And you're at UCF Jag, so you can find Dalton on YouTube. First, I want to ask Dalton, and you have a popular YouTube channel. What inspired you to make a channel about the Jacksonville Jaguars?
News from different kind of media sources. Some people like to read articles. Some people like talk radio. But me personally, I really enjoy watching videos on stuff. And when I'm on YouTube kind of looking up Jaguar analysis videos, I really couldn't find many that weren't from, a national media kind of source. And what generally happens with the national media is Jaguar fans don't usually like them because usually they like 31 teams more than the Jaguars. And when that happens, there's a lot of lazy reporting that goes on. And generally they try to bash the Jaguars more so than bringing up actual facts. So I'm out there to basically provide Jaguar fans with a good source of news and analysis to the news, and also create a better perception for the Jaguars, out there to the common NFL fan.
Now, UCF, being a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, do you kind of feel, you kind of alluded to it in your first answer, do you feel that chip on your shoulder because you guys are an expansion franchise? I believe you might be the second youngest franchise to maybe Carolina or maybe Houston in the entire league, and playing in the AFC South. Do you guys sometimes feel overlooked, and does that make your makeup as a Jaguar fan kind of unique in that you always have that chip on your shoulder and feel as if you're ignored by, the East and West Coasters like you alluded to?
Well, the thing is, the Jaguars are going to continue to be overlooked until they actually start winning games. I mean, we haven't had a winning season since 2007. Our last 5 seasons, we've had double-digit losing seasons, and it's just been a pretty rough last decade for Jaguar fans. But once the Jaguars start winning, if they can get into the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of people rooting for them just because they're a new team. They're kind of a gentle giant in some, senses. But the Jaguars, they'll continue. Like last year, for example, the national media was praising us for the first time in so long. And, from a strong free agent class and from a strong draft class. But what did that turn into? 3-13. So, I mean, this year, people have all the right to look over Jacksonville. And even me, I'm not trying to sit here and pump sunshine into the fan base saying we're going to go 11-5. But until this team starts winning, we're going to be overlooked by, national-wise.
I think a large aspect of Jacksonville Jaguar football being relevant again is your old friend and probably the initial hero of Jacksonville Jaguars football returning, Tom Coughlin, the godfather of Jaguars football. If him and Brunel, you have to show up 5 minutes early. You can't even urinate during the day with Tom Coughlin. He's gonna run a tough ship. And what do you think about TC being back? What do you think about this draft, man? You guys drafted some horses with Leonard Fournette and then the tackle Cam Robinson out of Alabama. What do you think of TC so far?
Yeah, well, I'll start off with TC. Tom Coughlin, man, we needed somebody like him to come into our organization, just bring some discipline to this team. I mean, with the whole Gus Bradley regime, he didn't necessarily emphasize winning. He more so emphasized getting better, every practice and, always alluding to seeing things that he likes. But the thing is, when you have an improving culture, you start to accept mediocrity. And that's exactly what the Jaguars did. And they were an extremely undisciplined team. They just weren't good all around the football this year. And really just Tom Coughlin coming in and bringing a whole new culture, cutting out all the BS with what's going on with the team, just enforce some strict rules where, bringing out the ping pong table, switching up the locker rooms to get out the clicks, just everything he's doing from, all around the organization is just great for the Jaguars.
Now you look at the potential of the defense now, Dalton. I mean, when I look at this defense, you have Jalen Ramsey, who I watched a little bit last year, and the guy is unbelievable. You know, watching him going up against DeAndre Hopkins. You have a Hall of Fame talent there. Then you have Dante Fowler. Can these guys both stay healthy on the field? And then the ultimate enigma, this is the guy that I think will take your franchise to the next level or not. It's second-rounder Miles Jack, who, you know, was a combine warrior, and the national media knew about him from UCLA because he was, and I don't want to use the pun, but he was a jack of all trades. So kind of talk about your defense and your expectations, including some free agent signings that you're probably going to enjoy with Calais Campbell coming on board too.
Man, I tell you, I am so excited about our defense, and if we can have a half-decent pass rush, we can be one of the top teams in the NFL just because, I mean, look at our linebackers, and we have Telvin Smith on the weak side, and then Miles Jack, who was actually my favorite player in last year's draft. It's because you've never seen a linebacker who can do some of the things he does. I mean, when he was at USC, or when he was at UCLA and he played USC, he literally told the coaches, hey, put me on Nelson Aguilar, I'll cover him the whole game. And he actually locked him down pretty well. I mean,
I can cover Nelson Aguilar. I'm pretty confident that. We just had someone say that here in Philadelphia that we could cover Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah, I just realized I'm calling him to Philadelphia, so you probably shouldn't say that name around you guys. But yeah, I mean,
that's okay.
we have those guys at linebacker. Then you look out to the cornerbacks, and Jalen Ramsey is obviously. If there's one player I'm gonna put all my money on to be an outstanding, great Pro Bowl, even potential Hall of Fame player, I'm putting my money on Jalen Ramsey. Just the way he's got such great length, and his speed and his physicality is just really, if you dream up of a cornerback, it looks like Jalen Ramsey. And then if we can, also our pass rush, we brought in Calais Campbell, Dante Fowler going into his second full healthy year. That's going to be good because last year he struggled a little bit on the pass rush. He was a little better on the run, but he struggled on the pass rush just because he really didn't have any pass rushing moves. But all words coming out of his camp are that he's been really working on his pass rushing moves. And also we have Yannick Ngakoue, defenseman. He was a third-round steal from Maryland who broke our rookie sack record last year. And, you know, we have a lot of good pieces to be a truly great top 5 NFL defense.
Yes, hi, I'm Bruce of Sports Talk. Thanks for coming on to Rover Sports, and it's great to get a Jacksonville perspective. It's a great town, and you can understand when you play football there, there's a lot of distractions, and you got Tom Coughlin, and I think he's really going to tighten everything up. But Doug Marrone is an offensive coach. He's a line coach, and you're going away from Gus Bradley, and I think they need some offense. Talk about Blake Bortles, shot in the arm. What's been the talk down there, and how can he improve? And obviously, as Bortles and Fournette go to the team, and you've got Cam, a big fixture there to actually protect him. So what's the buzz down there with Bortles?
Well, the thing about Bortles is he's getting a lot of talk lately just because free agency passed by and they didn't sign anybody. The draft came by and they didn't draft anybody. And then the 5th-year option deadline came up and they picked up his option. So they're pretty much all in on Bortles this year, but what they're doing for him is when they drafted Leonard Fournette, they're starting to change the whole identity of the offense. I mean, you saw them ship out the move tight end and Julius Thomas, who all he can really do is pass catch, and he brings in Brandon Albert, who's an outstanding run-blocking offensive lineman, and then you draft Leonard Fournette #1, you bring in Cam Robinson, who's also a great run-blocking lineman, and Doug Marrone and Tom Coughlin have been preaching all offseason. They want a tough, hard-nosed, just mean football team, especially just on the offensive side. So hopefully with the addition of Fournette, we'll actually be able to have a decent run game because they haven't had a good run game since 2012 when Maurice Jones-Drew was on the Jaguars, and Chris Ivory and TJ Yellen just left a run on the field last year. And I really thought Leonard Fournette was one of 2 elite prospects in this draft, with Myles Garrett being the other one. And just in the Jaguars system, if they can allow this guy to get to the second level, open up some holes for him, he's going to be a dangerous bowling ball going down the field.
It seems also that it will take some pressure off of Bortles when you have that premier. This is a 3-down guy. Fournette has got sprinter speed. We covered him at the combine. And when we stood next to him, he looks like an offensive lineman. That's how big he is. And you see him run. I think he also has a really good personality. I think Jacksonville will like Fournette. He's kind of a laid-back guy. And I think that'll be good for the fan base. I think just to give the Jags, it always seems like people overlook them, and they always have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, Fournette's going to be great for Blake because obviously I'm UCF Jaguar, and Blake is also UCF Jaguar. I mean, I've been following him since his college days, and when he was at UCF, he really benefited from having a good run game between Storm Johnson and Latavius Murray. It really, Bortles is best when he's on the run, so when he's able to get these play actions, actually have the linebackers, come down and bite and allow the receivers to open up a little bit and, having them fire away, that's going to be Bortles' strong suit just because last year we'd get in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 situations, and every single time we pretty much passed the ball just because they had more confidence in a struggling Blake Bortles than they did running the ball 2 or 3 yards to try to pick up a first, which is amazing to think.
Yeah, Dalton, a couple of more questions here. Thank you for joining us. It's Dalton, UCF Jaguar, joining us here on Rover Sports, ESPN Radio here in Philadelphia. And Dalton, when I watch Blake Bortles throw the football, though, at UCF, it's weird because it looked like his release, like the way he threw the ball, was a lot more fluid. And last year, you kind of see a hitch in his throw, especially versus the Ravens. I just see the guy kind of having weird hitches at the top of his release. Do you see that too from Blake Bortles? Is that kind of a concern of yours too, his release?
Well, the thing with Blake Bortles, in 2015, I thought he had a pretty decent throwing motion, but in 2016, one big difference was Greg Olsen, their old offensive coordinator, had some philosophical difference with Blake Bortles' quarterback mechanic coaches, Ben Tom House and his group out in California. So before the 2015 season, you saw a big improvement in him because he flew out to California, spent 10 weeks over there to improve his mechanics, and he came back and he looked great. But this offseason, Greg Olsen and obviously, like I said, and then the quarterback coaches had some philosophical differences. So Greg Olsen said, hey, Blake, you need to stay in Jacksonville, work with your wide receivers, and that's how you're going to get better. So, he did what his offense coordinator said. He stayed in Jacksonville, worked with Alan Hearns, Allen Robinson, and those guys. And then once week 3 came in the preseason against the Bengals, once live bulls kind of started to fire, all of a sudden you were like, what's wrong with this guy's throwing motion? And then it was just never got better until really the end of the year in the last 2 games once Gus Bradley was fired, because Doug Marrone came out and said that they started working more with Blake and his footwork during practice and really putting a lot more emphasis on that. And then his last 2 games, he threw 2 games with over 300 passing yards each, no interceptions, and a combined 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think it was. So yeah, I really think if you can get Bortles, if he can just get into mechanics, okay, if we can get a run game in here combined with a really good defense, if Blake Bortles plays with 2015 self, I think we can be a playoff team combined with our running game and defense.
It's kind of funny here because we have Carson Wentz, and when he was winning at the beginning of the year, nobody really had any quarrels with his throwing motion. But at the end of the year, particularly when it was like a brush fire, we had no offensive line here in Philly. People started micro-analyzing his throwing motion. He spent a little time with Tom House and that whole guru out there.
Rehabs with Tom House.
Yeah, they did a little bit of Zen. He did a little Zen Buddhism, their little airport Mooney activity, and now everybody is hypercritical of Wentz. So it's funny when you're losing. It's easy to micromanage the throwing motion.
Then once, Jacksonville, Blake of going out and getting drunk the night before games and all this other kind of stuff. It was almost like, Bigfoot. It's like you hear all these sightings happen, but you never see any pictures of it going on. So, but yeah, the micromanaging when you're doing bad, it's just kind of gets.
I think that's realistic because he was playing like he was drunk.
Yeah, I mean, there were some games where it was pretty bad last year. I mean, oh my gosh, I don't really want to think about back then.
I want old Blake back, but more than I want old Blake back, I'll take his old girlfriend. I'll take that, man. Being a UCF guy, you know Andy Duke as well. I wanted to ask you this final question, Dalton. It is awesome having you on Rover Sports, man, and I can't wait to talk to you more during football season. And we're going to leave you with this last question. Todd Wash. I can't believe that this guy's a defensive coordinator in the NFL. He looks like he'd come from one of those like biker gangs up in South Dakota with all his tattoos. He'd look like he'd whip us in beer pong, like he wouldn't miss a shot. I mean, how much fun would it be to play beer pong with Todd Wash, and how wild is it now having this guy with arm sleeves of tattoos as your defensive coordinator there in Jacksonville?
Oh my gosh, you already know this guy is the first guy that would want to shotgun a beer. He's the first guy to take his shirt off at a party. He's the first guy to want to fight somebody. I mean, I would love to go out and drink with him and be drinking pals with this guy, but, hopefully, he has a pretty defense over here, so I'm just kind of worried about him focusing on the defense a little bit and trying to make that defense elite.
And we'll take it from there, Dalton. You can find Dalton at UCF Jags. Thanks a lot, man, for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.